Udrive, many of you will know Udrive. It's a household name in the UAE. And one of the major reasons that they're raising funds is to expand abroad outside of the UAE, with plans to enter both Saudi Arabia and Turkey. They're one of only 2 players licensed to offer pay-per-minute car rental in the UAE. And I'm delighted to introduce Udrive's Managing Director, Nick Watson. Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Sid. It's great to see you all here. As we only have 10 minutes, I will move quite fast through the presentation, but my name is Nick Watson, I'm the Managing Director, and we're Udrive. I'm sure most of you have probably used the service if you live in the UAE. If you haven't, you have definitely seen the cars on the road. We have celebrated over 1 million trips, and we are growing very quick, even post-COVID. We're going back into growth mode. So what do? We solve real problems that exist for mobility today. People are moving away from CapEx into OpEx-based ownership of vehicles. They want on-demand when they need. They don't want to have to worry about credit approvals. They may have no credit, they may have credit, they just don't want to worry about it. People don't want to put deposits in the traditional traditional rental world, and they want access to vehicles based on their functional needs for that moment. Plus, they want a simplified experience. And I'm sure everybody's tried rental car experience in the UAE or in the world, and you can imagine just the amount of friction there is. So we solve that by you not owning anything, but you can use everything. You can rent by the minute, or you can go into subscription-based modeling. We don't credit score you. We don't take deposits. You pay as you go. And our fleets are designed to help you achieve whatever your end goal is in terms of functional use. And it is a pure, fully digital experience. There is no need for human interaction for you to get in the car and drive it wherever you want. How do we do it? We take an analog device, which is a car. We add an IoT device into the car that gives us full control over the car, locking, immobilization. We know where the car is, we know where it's driving, we know everything about the car. And then we give a nice front end for the customer to access the vehicle and book their trips. Once you do this, it gives you the ability to add unlimited business models to that vehicle, whether it's charged by distance, charged by time, whether you want a consumer to be in the car, a business, or it's going to be in the future like Airbnb, P2P. We can also do a lot of things such as geo-locking the cars so that a car must park in that parking spot and can only be taken from there and left there. So a lot of things we can do that traditional rental and other fleet utilization platforms cannot do. Our business model today, what everybody knows of, is per minute, per kilometer, per day, etc. We will be launching subscription-based modeling, which will be announced further down the line. We have business corridors coming out, which will allow more businesses to leverage our infrastructure, and of course, functional fleets that allow customers to have vehicles specifically designed for functional use, not just emotional use. We're cheap. We are way cheaper than any other form of moving vehicle in the market. Marina to the airport, 28 dirhams, 31 dirhams, depending on how long it takes for you to get there. Nearest is taxi, which is 76 dirhams. So we have room to move the pricing within our model. And post-COVID, we have more demand for our service than we did pre-COVID, and our average trip length has increased dramatically from 41 minutes to 65 minutes. So our customer experience, you register, you reserve, you drive, you park anywhere and everywhere. You can see the cars on the mobile app, you can book the car, and then you go to the car and you open it. We include fuel, we don't take deposits, you pay for what you use, insurance is included, and parking is included. We were launched in 2016, 0 users. We were the first to launch in the GCC. We then worked with the RTA to create a tender point, which allowed another company to come in after us. In 2017, we had 100 cars, 15,000 users. In 2018, 350 cars, 50,000 users. 2019, leading into 2020 in March, we had 550 plus cars with 125,000 users. And as of today, we have 185,000 users and 280 cars as we removed all of the more expensive fleet to focus on economic transport for customers. And we'll be expanding into KSA and Turkey as we move forwards. Our growth was obviously very nice. We're going back into growth again, so those numbers are going back into positive territory, double-digit, triple-digit numbers across the board. How do we beat COVID? Very simple. We focus on preserving capital. In March, we were shut down, so we reduced all our, we were very fortunate. We had natural fleet removal, because we had fleet that were 2 years old and 3 years old. So we removed them anyway from May, June, July, and August. However, we were also able to exit several leases that allowed us to focus on unit economics. So our fleet today is more focused on what the consumers want, which is economic vehicles at a great price. And as we came back after COVID, we also added another 100 cars to our fleet, and we regrew our team and the Emirates we operate in. So back into growth. We launched a bike fleet to sanitize cars. So we were able to move very quickly to sanitize interior of cars after the trips. We are very focused on making sure the customer experience is as clean as possible and as safe as possible. These visuals show you what happened during being shut down. And in the moment we were allowed to operate again, you can see the cars switching on. On the right-hand side, you can see a few lines, that's Sharjah. And then if I just click here, you'll see Sharjah moving, then Dubai come back online at the end of May. And suddenly you see all the trips over the UAE. On the right-hand side, you can see what we call hotspots. This is what we use for rebalancing cars. And it just shows you the demand in the market. And right now, we don't have enough cars to service our customer base, hence why we're going back into growth. You can see here a couple of spots where it comes back online. You suddenly start seeing Dubai Marina and all the main areas where we have demand in the market. So what are our key milestones? In 2020, we are investing in our full stack, not just the IoT, but the middleware and the customer experience. We're expanding internationally. Of course, we'll continue to expand across the GCC and the UAE, and then a big focus towards the end of 2021 to do P2P in markets that make sense for our profitability focus and for the customer experience. And then, of course, towards 2022, a full mobility self-drive platform for anybody that wants to physically move themselves in the market. Our key priorities for 2020 and 2021, invest in the technology, enhance the customer experience, expansion, but very, very focused expansion on the fleet dynamics, build an in-class wallet that would help create loyalty for our customers based on the behavior, and then of course, create more utilization and fleet optimization using automation. Our longer term vision towards 2023, profitability in all matured markets would be UAE, KSA, and Turkey. Complete frictionless customer experience, fully automated for B2C, B2B, and our P2P infrastructure. And then, of course, automate as much as we can so that the customer never has to speak to a human being or interact with a human being to be able to move and have the mobility they want. And then, of course, start working with the manufacturers on integration directly with their vehicles. Several cars now are coming with IoT devices already embedded. And then, of course, ensure we are the #1 self-drive mobility platform in the MENAT region. Of course, there's plenty of opportunity, lots of drivers available in the GCC, and it increases every year. And then, of course, in Turkey as well, there's a huge population of drivable age users. Our revenue, so just to talk about our UAE revenue, because we are in the UAE, you can see the revenue from 2017 growing with the cars, and then of course dipping again in 2020 because we reduced the number of cars. In actual fact, we generate more revenue per car now than we did pre-COVID. As we scale into 2021, we're not going back to the same size as we had in 2019, with a little bit extra. This is where we start to hit profitability. And then, of course, a little bit more expansion in 2022, but we're being a little bit cautious because nobody knows where we will be with COVID. Our gross profit at that point, obviously a bit of some nice GP in 2019, obviously a loss in 2020. We stopped operating for 2.5 months. That's what killed us on the GP, but we're going to go straight back to profitability and GP level in 2021 and 2022. Operating profit, we go to profitability for the first time in 2021. And the main reason is we have absolutely refocused on the unit economics, completely invested in technology over the last 6 months to streamline operational expenses. And this is why we're able to go to profitability in 2021. Plus, we learned a lot from the first 3 years of scaling the business. Our exit strategy, very, very simple. A trade sale, somebody coming and acquiring us, either an external large organization or somebody who's already in the region. There'll be options. We have IPO potential in the region or external, depending on how the market goes. And then, of course, there's always the opportunity for a private equity exit. Our valuation is $17.65 million US. We are raising up to $5 million US, mostly from institutional investors. And we are doing 1.25 through Eureeca, of which I think Sid will confirm we pretty much finished. I think it's going into stretch target now, but I'll let him talk about it.
Yeah, so
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for going very fast.
You were perfect on time, actually, Nick. So yeah, just to
perfect.
clarify that, we're over 1.2 out of that 1.25 now. So we're getting pretty close to it. And there's a significant pipeline there. So we've got some bank transfers and so on coming in. So like you said, we are pretty much there, but we're able to overfund for Udrive. So I think we're going to dive straight into the Q&A portion of this now. And we have quite a few coming in. So is the investment for Udrive still open? It says an investor saying he was an early adopter. So the answer is yes. And as I mentioned, Udrive are currently in visible early access, but we'll be going live, fully live on the platform next week. So next Tuesday. Of course, there are early adopter discounts. Currently, Udrive has a 10% discount. Once they go fully live, that will drop down to 5%. And once they hit that $1.25 million mark, it will drop down again to 0% discount on the 17.65 million valuation. So sorry, Nick, I stole your thunder there and answered that one, but I think that was an easy one for me to do. Okay, next one. So we have a question here. Why so many? Why have you terminated so many employees? Like, why have you gone down from 85 to just 10? Was this just because of the COVID-19 lockdown?
Yeah. So the reality is we had to survive, and we wanted to ensure that there was a company for the employees to come back to, because it wasn't COVID that stopped our revenue. It was literally, we were forced to shut down for 2 months. And then once you have cars on the road sitting for 2 months, the batteries die, and yet it takes you another 6 weeks to spin back up 500 cars. At the same time, we were not able to hand them back while we were in 24-hour sanitization. So it could only happen when we came back in May, right? So our employees, we had to put them on unpaid leave. And then as we started scaling back up, we started bringing them back one by one. And now we're back up to a fleet that represents the size, and we'll keep hiring back as we scale the fleet. We are way more operationally efficient now than we were pre-COVID, because we had time to invest in the technologies that we were already planning to do through growth, but we were able to do it faster because we didn't have to worry about operational headaches of operating a fleet as it was not operating.
Perfect. And okay, we've got a question here. How much capital has been raised in this funding round of Udrive? So I think you pretty much covered that, but maybe you can just reiterate.
Yeah, so out of the 5 million, we have already, well, with Eureeca, we have that portion. We have another 2 million committed, and the rest is being worked on as we speak.
Perfect. Are there any plans for you to expand into Israel now that UAE and Israel have become closer?
Our priorities are Saudi Arabia, GCC, and Turkey, but we are open to all opportunity.
Okay, and then we've got a question here about your operating profits. So it's saying your operating profit has been increasingly negative over the past 3 years. I'm guessing that's a function of the apart from COVID, that's revenue.
That's the function of grow at any cost, yeah, as a VC type enterprise.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that slightly, or should we move to the next question?
It's the fact that when you create a company and you're going for a startup and you're trying to gain market share, you don't have the power with the leasing providers that you would traditionally have after 3 years. So you don't get the best deals, you don't get the best unit economics. You have to spend a lot of energy on making sure that people are aware of your platform. And that's where the losses come. And of course, you create inefficient business modeling and cost structures because you're just growing as quickly as possible. But after 3 years, you get the chance to work on your operations and your efficiency. And you also build technology to streamline operations, which obviously reduces your costs.
And can you go into the use of funds again, please, in terms of how are you planning to use those funds? Markets and tech.
Yeah, predominantly it's mostly focused on technology. So we split the business use of funds into 2 components. Driving profitability in the UAE, which means that all the focus is investing on operational technology, talent, and the right business partnerships to ensure that we hit profitability in the UAE. Let's call it a matured market. The remaining budget will be allocated to growth market, which is like producing a loss in a growing market so that we expand, grow, acquire contacts, customer base, and then get to profitability within 18 months of that market being launched. We know we can do it because we see it in the UAE and moving very nicely towards it. We just want to replicate that in other markets. And there are essentially startup costs to going into a market in terms of fleet acquisition, customer acquisition, and the catch up of customers going into the cars.
Perfect. And okay, so we have a question here. Which company is your main competitor, both in the UAE and globally?
So, well, I think everybody knows like Zipcar and all that in the international markets. So you could just, there's many of them. In the UAE, there's only one other company called eCar that provide the same service. We have different ways of operating, different brands, different styles, but we offer the same per minute and also daily rental cars. I think I answered that right. And then traditionally, our largest competitors for both Udrive and eCar is the incumbent market, which is rental car market or leasing market, whereby they have stagnant business models and they don't have a digital experience for the customer.
I think that's crucial, right? So, I mean,
yeah.
Do you have an idea? Maybe add some.
All the markets. Look, the best markets to enter are the ones which have big rental markets. The UAE has a big rental market and leasing market. Saudi Arabia does. Turkey does. These are the ones to disrupt really easily and really nicely because you have so many old school rental companies, and you just take away their business. Then you have the disruptors like us or an Uber or a Careem or whatever that we're working on two different sides of the coin. They're on the we drive you and we're on you drive yourself, right? So right now there's enough business in the market for everybody to just own a piece of the pie. And eventually there will be consolidation through some sort of M&A, JV or outright acquisition.
Makes sense. So this question is, what is the business structure of Udrive and what are the control aspects in relation to fundraising? So maybe we can divide that up into two. So we could talk maybe about the structure and corporate governance, and then we could talk about the fundraising and the protection of investors.
We have a group holding company, ADGM, that owns all the business entities in Dubai, Sharjah, Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia. So there's your corporate structure. We have a board and we have investors now coming onto the board as this round gets closed as part of their investments. And all future acquisitions or investments or new companies that we create will go under the holding company.
Yeah, and I think in terms of control aspects in regards to fundraising, so I mean, you're pretty much at the 1.25 million as far as Eureeca goes, and it's important to mention that companies set a minimum funding target, which is what they say they need as a bare minimum for the round to make any sense. We don't release money from our escrow accounts unless and until the business hits that minimum funding target. So it's not super applicable to Udrive because you're right on the verge of hitting it. And actually, it's not hugely applicable to any of the three businesses raising today, but it's an important point to mention. So we operate escrow accounts and the money goes in there before it's released to companies. What are your market expansion plans for KSA in Turkey?
The main cities, and so obviously Riyadh, Jeddah, Dammam. We will go into some of the other micro cities with different businesses or different business models. That's confidential at the moment for public domain, but we have some. What we have today is what we call a general public fleet, right? So anybody and everybody can use the cars as long as you have a driver's license. We do have a future where we have very strategic audiences and very strategic fleet that are aligned to those customer bases.
Perfect. Have you explored advertising on cars as a revenue stream?
Yeah, on cars, on the outside of the car, heavily regulated in the UAE. You have to pay to play. Well, we'll see about that over time. In other markets where it's open, we will look at it. A lot of our customers want to see no branded cars. So we are launching a fleet that has zero branding according to whatever the regulations are. And advertising inside the mobile app, and these are all areas we've looked at. It's not a core business and it is an ancillary revenue, but our priority is to stay focused on the customer experience and not get sidetracked by an extra 5,000 dirhams here or there. We want to focus on big ticket gravy income that will actually drive and be beneficial for the customer experience.
Okay. Are you planning to dismantle the leasing contracts completely in the future and go completely P2P?
Yeah, so we're semi there with the leasing contracts as it is. We've been very fortunate to have, we don't have leasing companies, we have partners. We treat them like they're employees, because in the end, if we want 50 more cars, they need to be able to provide it there and then. So we have very friendly commercial contracts, which are very beneficial to us, whether there's a shutdown or a scaling, etc. When it comes to P2P, this is based on regulation, not our technology. Today, I can take the box, put it in your car, and you can press a button on your mobile phone and it's on Udrive. This is not a problem. It's all about working with the regulators to meet their requirements. And we will be doing that in 2021 in very select markets where it's possible.
So a question here, I've already pre-committed. When will I receive my shares? So as soon as the Udrive round is completed, it will take approximately closer to the shorter end of that before your shares are issued to you. When will the proposal itself be off the platform? It depends on two things. Normally it's 90 days from live, but the company also has the right to pull the deal off the platform once they're fully funded. So I think that depends a little bit on the institutional round, if I'm not mistaken, Nick. You're reserving the right to take a call on that as when you close that institutional portion.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got a question about the unit economics. I know you've mentioned them a couple of times. So they've asked about the profit per trip. And there's another question about customer acquisition versus lifetime revenue per customer. So I know that we've got some documentation that we could potentially share offline, but is there anything you'd like to say during this webinar?
Yeah, pre-COVID made a loss on unit economics on an average across the whole fleet. Now we make a profit on average per day with the cars. And the reason we're able to achieve this was because we focused on the leasing contracts themselves and the partners, and we've been able to secure much, much better deals on the vehicles. Plus, at the same time, we've completely streamlined the unit economics, which involved operations like our drivers and stuff like that when they clean the cars. That has a massive impact when you optimize much better, and the revenue was obviously increased on the cars as well. So
and I think
that's the question.
Yeah, and I think there's some pretty detailed models there. So if you'd like to know more about that, please reach out to investors at Eureeca.com offline, or you can contact Nick through the Eureeca platform.
And just to answer on the lifetime value of a customer, you know, the lifetime of a customer right now, it depends on their unique case. We have customers that need a car for a day once a year, right? I mean, that the LTV on that is negligible. Maybe it's once a year for 5 years, or they're not in the UAE. And if it's a transient customer, then we'll never see them again. But we do have customers that use a car absolutely every single day to go to work and come home from work. And we have customers that have thousands and thousands of dirhams. We have customers with 15,000 dirhams in billings over a year. I don't know what they're doing all day with the cars, but they're generating a lot of income. We have quite a few customers like that.
And I'm just going to put this out there as well for our non-UAE customers. The exchange rate from dirham to dollar is 3.67, just in case anyone's trying to do the maths on the dirham to dollar conversion. So, okay, what is your track record and background before Udrive?
Yeah, so I've lived in the UAE since 2003. So I've been here a little bit longer than many people. I've been through a lot of the upticks and a lot of the downside. I ran a company called Nasaba that was very well known in the region for deal flow, helping companies commercialize into the region. So foreign companies or foreign concepts come into the region, looking for local partners and then developing a business from them and then growing. So I help them with commercialization and scaling, which is obviously very important in a region like this across the GCC. And then, of course, helping to raise capital and to formulate the business model for this region. A lot of mistakes are made, and I'm sure if anybody here has done business in the region, a lot of business learning, a lot of mistakes being made by people coming from a foreign market into the UAE, expecting to just replicate the business here and realizing it does not work that way. And so I have a lot of experience in the localization of any type of business across fintech, cybersecurity, consumer tech, etc.
Okay, and then So car rental models normally rely on gains from the sale of used cars. Do you see yourself going down that path at any point in the future?
Not if we have a choice, which is right now we have a choice. We want to run an OpEx business. We don't want to run a CapEx business. What happens with rental car companies is they take a car for 1,000 dirhams and they rent it for the month for 1,200 dirhams. We take 1,000 dirham car and we generate 3,000 dirhams because we fractionally rent the car, right? So the more you can move towards 1 minute in rental, the more margin you can make. Now, there are more costs to renting a car every minute, but that's because we digitize the car and then we have to cover petrol and parking and a bunch of other things. But you can generate more margin. And so you just then need to be a technology outfit to be able to achieve that. So we don't need to dispose of cars because we can make the margin on each car itself. It's just a matter about multiplying the number of cars and the contribution from the cars into the operating business.
Okay. And then look, you touched on the corporate structure earlier. So there's a follow-up question to that, which is why did you choose ADGM over DIFC or even Delaware for the holding company?
Middle East, predominantly Middle East investors. It's very easy with ADGM to set up a holding company. They have some nice structures in place, apart from the price component. People seem to like ADGM. They also like DIFC. I think it's just what do you want. Nobody's ever had a problem with it being ADGM. And if it'd been DIFC, it would have been the same thing. Yeah, our lawyer suggested it and we agreed with them.
Yeah. And okay, so there's a question about how your raise is going. So yes, he's pretty close to hitting the investment target on Eureeca. Are you also targeting impact investors, and how's your positioning with those investors?
Right now, we're targeting any investor. As a business, we like to think that we probably solve a CSR or a more altruistic vision, such as we are moving into electric, but we can only move into electric when the unit economics work for us. Actually, we're doing a lot of stuff with some companies in the UAE on electric, and that will be announced in the next couple of months. But that will be very specific to a certain user group that will be able to afford the vehicle pricing or the rental on the vehicles. But yeah, like if green is an angle, then we will get there eventually. We're limited by availability of vehicles and the lease price and the ability to charge customers for that vehicle. And if the demand is there and the vehicle pricing is there and we can make a profit on it, then we will move towards it. We learned how to scale at any cost, and that's not a nice vision when you hit COVID. It's nice when there's just tons of money being poured in, but it's not good when you hit COVID and you need to actually be self-sufficient. And so that's our vision right now.
I'm glad you touched on electric cars because we had a couple of questions on those as well. So that's answered as well. Why choose Turkey as your next market and not Egypt, for example?
Strategic, investor, and access. One of the secrets to this business and what we learned from the last 3 years is go where there's a big black hole opportunity, right? Where there's just an abundance of lack of innovation and mobility solution, and go to a place with lots of people. Now Egypt has that, and we do like the idea of Egypt, but we've made commitments to initial investors, original investors, that this will be our plan. Egypt is on the roadmap, and it is actually after Turkey. Doesn't mean we can't do all at once because the technology is scalable. It's all about having the capital to inject to set up the businesses in those countries and then get the leasing providers on board and the customer base acquired.
Mm-hmm. And what are the top concerns of the regulators for enabling P2P in the UAE?
Security. They want to know who's driving the car. They want to know what's going on with the car. They don't want to have issues with customers crashing a car and saying it wasn't them driving the car and stuff like this. General things that you could imagine, that's what they're concerned about. And we have the ability to solve all of that with our technology. And it's just a matter of conversations and talking. We still have a lot of space in the market without P2P. The fact is, the market needs to be ready to put their cars on the platform. Businesses are ready, leasing companies are ready, rental companies are ready, our own fleet is ready. But when it comes to consumers, we can convince a bunch of people, but what we need to do is make sure the market's completely ready and the RTA is willing to accept it as an opportunity for the market. In Dubai, for example.
Here's an interesting one that we haven't had before, but I think is a good one for you. So Uber's self-drive business was recently in the news. So have you benchmarked your performance with this vertical of Uber? And the second question was, do you expect any competition from them in the near future? And then I'm going to add a third one actually to that, which is, do you see him as a potential acquirer?
So I'll ask the last one.
That's
sure.
my one. The third one is mine.
All right, fine, sure. Why not? Yeah, the thing is, if you look at what we do, you got on one side you got Uber, on the other side you got Udrive. We drive, and somebody else drives you. Everybody's moving towards autonomous driving, so eventually there's going to be some sort of acquisition or consolidation. We have 200,000 customers. We have between 5,000 and 10,000 new registrations every single month. We don't have cars for them. That's why we need to expand. We have people that want small cars, large cars, long lease, short lease. We have businesses asking for vehicles. So our issue is not customers. Our issue is fleet and the ability to scale and provide an operational fleet that has very high utilization. So we don't just want to dump cars onto the market. To ask the question about Uber and their own self-drive, more the merrier. We know our hotspot. We see our financials every single day. And if they come into the market, we know what it's going to be like for them. They can't come into the Dubai market. There's only 2 operators and per minute allowed. No problem. They can't come in right now. And even if they could, the market can sustain 4 to 5 operators. You look at somewhere like Berlin, it has 8 to 10 operators for car sharing, and everybody has found their own unique niche. And in the end, it boils down to the customer experience. If you have good cars or good experience, you can win market share. And of course, we're excited about 2021 because we're completely overhauling the entire fleet to go to brand new cars.
Well, so there's a question about the fleet here. So they're saying, are you going to keep using Peugeot cars or let them go in the future?
God, man, why do people love these Peugeots? Okay, so to answer that question, we learned a lot from the first couple of years about which brands can handle high volume usage. You have 1 million trips, that's 1 million cars taken, that's 1 million doors open, it's 1 million door closed, 1 million steering wheels, it's 1 million gear shifts. It's a huge amount of, you learn a lot about what cars can handle. What you think is a good deal in the beginning, it turns out to not be a great deal in the end. But Peugeot also learned from their mistake when they entered into the market and started pushing these vehicles. They realized they weren't ready for the Middle East, and so they had to completely revamp. We have just brought on 50 brand new Peugeot 301s, and so far every single customer is like, we love this car. It has Apple Play, CarPlay, rear view camera, sensors. It's a much better driving experience, and everything has been changed on the car. It's been designed for the Middle East, higher air conditioning standards, everything. So we like the Peugeots again. The previous ones, they are gone. We are moving to replace them over the next couple of months, and anything else that needs expiring.
Okay, so we've got a few minutes left and a lot of questions left. We've still got another, quite a few questions left to answer. So we may not get to all of them. Just remember, if we don't, I will pass these questions on to the entrepreneurs who can reach out to you directly offline. So we have time for 2 or 3 more. So okay, you mentioned user groups. How many? So what are those user groups, and what kind of research have you compiled to support that?
So our users today are demographically 23, because that's the minimum age we can really have. We'd love to have more, but insurance prohibits us across the different fleet types. To 35 years old, normally employed. White collar workers going to work from home to the office. The demographic massively switches on a like an hourly basis. So in the morning, it's your people going to work or doing business trips, for example. And in the evening, from 6 to 7 p.m. onwards, it turns into your entertainment fleet, where people go into the supermarket, they're going shopping, they're going out with friends. And of course, on the weekend, it just completely changes dynamically. Our people move from short-term rental to whole day rental. So cars that normally would be per minute during the day actually turn into daily cars, because people keep them for the whole day, and it maxes out at a max price. So if you take a a per minute car for 3 hours, it maxes out 140 dirhams and you don't pay any more for the rest of the day.
Yeah, so there's another question about that actually in terms of mileage restriction per car. So
yeah, it depends. You know, in the presentation we mentioned we digitize a car and we apply a business model to the car. So that the whole strategy behind our cars is to provide a vehicle that meets the need of the customer today. So we have today 99 dirham daily cars that comes with 100 kilometers. So it's up to the customer if they want to drive more or not. But when you have a 99 dirham car, including petrol, parking, and insurance, even if you get a cheaper car in the market for 55 dirhams, you have to get to it, or they have to get it to you. You have to sit around. You have to pay for the petrol and you have to pay for the parking. So it ends up being the same price and the convenience is not there. And then we have cars that are 70 fills per minute.
Okay, and then so final question, can you speak about the team? Who else is on the team?
Yeah, so we have Hasib, who's the founder and CEO. We have head of tech, Misbah Ali. We have head of business who's handling the what we call internal operations business product to help us streamline efficiency. That's for Shab. We have our Dipico heads up marketing. We have Jana, head of finance. And then of course we have our fleet management team, a guy called Errol, a guy called John for fleet management. And then we have Asif, who heads up our driver teams. So we have and these are all, they're not for lifers, but they've been here a very long time, and then they're not transient people. They understand the business and they actually love the business.
Let's sneak in one more, actually. Okay, can you explain your internal controls, external auditors, and governance protocols?
Yeah, so we are fully audited up to 2019. We have management accounts on IFRS standard. We have an investment team, a board which is made up of investors that are professional and they have very high standards on reporting, which is awesome. We have IFRS standards on all our documentation, and we've been audited by KPMG. So, and we have another Axel Consulting or somebody auditing who does our auditing as well. I would say we're pretty good for a startup. Most startups don't have the level of financial acumen on the reporting.
Perfect. So before we move on to the next business, Nick, time for a quick closing comment about Udrive. How would you like to sum up the investment opportunity?
Yeah, I think other than being a homegrown brand that everybody knows and understands, and people have an affinity to the Udrive. I don't know if it's because it's green, or it's because of the Mustangs, or it's because it's just the brand has a bit more of a fun-loving attitude to life. We are growing, and we want to make sure that whenever you open that app, you have a car available. And that's our biggest problem now, is that we upset thousands of people a week because they cannot find a car. And it's our biggest problem. It's a great problem to have, but it's an issue when you need to close down cars and then go back into growth. But the fact is we have such a good opportunity to have different cars right now. And that's what 2021 is all about.
Fantastic.
So Nick, we're excited to have you as investors and be our customers as well.